Imagine this. You're at home, living your daily life, enjoying the small comforts you've built for yourself, your family, your work, your community. Then one day, there's a knock on the door, and suddenly, you're told to pack up and leave. Not for a vacation, not for a visit, but to an unknown place, for an unknown amount of time. You're not a criminal. You've done nothing wrong. But still, you're told to go. This was the reality for over 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II, a chapter of U.S. history that is both shocking and often overlooked. This paper tries to examine the narrative of Japanese internment during the Second World War in terms of its occurrence, experiences, and lasting impacts it has had on American society. The attacks began on December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor. The assault shocked the country and plunged the United States into World War II. In a moment, Japanese Americans were transformed from neighbors, classmates, and co-workers to being seen as the enemy. Apprehension and distrust spread quickly. Rumors of espionage and sabotage fueled paranoia. Even without evidence, a portion of the American public and politicians came to believe that Japanese Americans, many of whom were U.S. citizens, posed a threat. The phrase, "a Jap's a Jap," sadly gained currency. Executive Order 9066 soon followed. Signed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt on February 19, 1942, it granted the military the authority to establish military zones and forcibly remove from those areas those deemed security risks. For Japanese Americans, this order was a signal that a nightmarish experience had begun. Japanese Americans were systematically rounded up and sent to temporary assembly centers such as fairgrounds, racetracks, and even horse stalls. After this initial relocation, they were sent to one of 10 internment camps located in remote areas, such as Manzanar in California and Hart Mountain in Wyoming. The camps were a far cry from home. Families lived in small, poorly insulated barracks. Privacy? Forget it. Food was rationed, and the camps were surrounded by barbed wire and armed guards. Imagine being treated like a prisoner, just for existing. Despite these conditions, Japanese Americans showed incredible resilience. They formed schools, churches, and community groups within the camps. Many even volunteered for military service to prove their loyalty to a country that had doubted them. The internment wasn't just a moral failing, it was a legal disaster. Some Japanese Americans fought back, challenging the government's actions in court. The most famous case was Korematsu versus United States, but tragically, the Supreme Court upheld the internment, citing military necessity. It wasn't until decades later that the ruling was widely recognized as a grave injustice. In 1988, the U.S. government finally apologized. President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, which granted reparations to surviving internees and formally acknowledged that the internment had been driven by racism and not real security concerns. But here's the thing. An apology doesn't erase the trauma. Families lost homes, businesses, and years of their lives, and the scars of being treated as the other ran deep. History has a way of repeating itself if we're not careful. The story of Japanese internment is a powerful reminder of what happens when fear overrides justice, and prejudice takes the place of reason.